The first time I noticed the letter, it was sticking out from my mailbox like a paper dagger. White envelope, HOA logo printed in blue at the top, and my name typed in bold, James Walker. I stood there for a moment on the curb, the autumn wind tugging at the corners of the envelope, as if even nature wanted me to read what the Homeowners Association had to say this time. I ripped it open right there, leaning against my old Ford truck, and scanned the contents. It started the way they always do. Dear Mr. Walker, this is a formal notice regarding a violation of the community standards. My stomach tightened. According to Section 4, subsection B of the HOA Covenant, ornamental displays exceeding the approved limit constitute a breach of neighborhood aesthetic standards. I kept reading. My jaw clenched as I hit the key line. Failure to comply within 10 days will result in fines and potential legal action. I stared at the words like they were written in blood. Legal action? Over what? Over gnomes? I glanced at my front yard. There they were, all 6 of them, standing proudly among the freshly cut grass. Bright ceramic smiles, little red hats, fishing poles, and watering cans. I bought them after my divorce last year. Not because I was crazy or lonely, though maybe a little of both, but because they made me laugh. After my wife left, the house felt dead silent. Those little gnomes brought a flicker of life back. Now the HOA wanted them gone. I crumpled the letter in my fist and muttered, unbelievable. This wasn't the first time the HOA tried to stick their nose in my business. A month ago, it was because my trash cans were out too early. Before that, my mailbox paint was fading. Every time, it was something petty, something stupid. But this was personal. I marched inside, letter still balled in my fist, and tossed it on the kitchen counter. The house smelled like coffee and motor oil, a mix of breakfast and the weekend project I'd been putting off in the garage. I opened the fridge, grabbed a beer, and sat down at the table. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer audacity of it all. Legal action, I whispered, staring out the window at my little ceramic friends. The gnomes stood there in silence, like soldiers waiting for orders. The leader, at least in my head, was the one with the fishing pole. I called him Gus. Gus didn't care about HOA rules. Gus just wanted to fish. I laughed bitterly and took a swig of beer. The taste was flat, but it helped cool the anger boiling inside me. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor, Linda. Hey, James, did you get a letter from the HOA? I saw the president snooping around your yard yesterday. Of course she did. Of course the president. Rick Peterson, the man who lived 2 houses down and thought he ran the entire block, had something to do with this. Rick was the kind of guy who mowed his lawn twice a week and measured the length of his grass with a ruler. His mailbox was always polished, his driveway spotless, and he hated my gnomes. Asterisk, yeah, I texted back. They're threatening to sue me. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed again. Seriously? Over gnomes? That's insane. If you need me to sign something or speak up, let me know. Linda was good people. She was one of the few on this street who didn't worship at the altar of HOA perfection. I typed back. Thanks, Linda. Might take you up on that. I stared at the text for a long time, my mind churning. This wasn't just about a few lawn ornaments. This was about control. About someone like Rick thinking he could dictate how I lived in my own damn house. No, not happening. I walked outside, the beer bottle still in my hand, and stood on the porch. The late afternoon sun painted the sky orange and gold. My yard looked perfect to me. Green grass, neat flower beds, and my gnomes standing proud like tiny guardians. I thought about my life before all this. Before the divorce. Before the HOA letters. Back when weekends were for barbecues and watching football with my wife, Emily. When we'd sit on this same porch and talk about planting a garden one day. Those gnomes were supposed to be a piece of that dream. I wasn't about to let Rick, or anyone, take that away. But as the sun dipped lower, the anger settled into something colder, sharper. This wasn't just going to be a fight. This was going to be a war. And if Rick thought 6 gnomes were a problem, he hadn't seen anything yet. The idea hit me like a bolt of lightning, and I felt a grin tug at my lips. If they wanted to play games, fine. I'd give them a show they'd never forget. I stepped off the porch, walked over to Gus and the gang, and knelt down. Don't worry, boys, I whispered, a laugh bubbling in my chest. You're about to get some reinforcements. The night air carried a chill, but inside me, a fire had started, and it wasn't going out anytime soon. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The HOA letter was still on the counter, looking smug. I ignored it, made myself a strong cup of coffee, and sat by the window, staring out at the yard. The gnomes were still there, tiny and defiant against the manicured tyranny of suburbia. 10 days. That's what the letter said. 10 days to comply before the fines started stacking up. Then legal action. The thought of them dragging me into court over ceramic figurines made my blood boil. But instead of sulking, I started planning. I grabbed my laptop and started searching Garden Gnomes bulk order. Turns out, there are entire websites dedicated to these little guys. Fishing gnomes, golfing gnomes, gnomes with beer mugs, gnomes mooning the neighbors, you name it, they had it. And the prices? Dirt cheap if you buy in bulk. I clicked add to cart so many times my finger cramped. By the time I was done, I'd ordered 72 gnomes. Delivery expected in 3 days. 3 days, and my yard was going to look like something out of a fairy tale on steroids. I leaned back in my chair, sipping coffee like a general reviewing battle plans. This wasn't just payback. This was art. This was rebellion. This was freedom. The phone buzzed again. "Linda, you okay?" she asked. I smirked. "Better than okay. Working on a plan." "Oh," she replied. "What kind of plan?" I hesitated, then typed, "The kind that'll make Rick wish he'd never messed with me." Before she could reply, I closed my phone and started my day. I had work to do. Those 3 days felt like the longest of my life. Every time I stepped outside, I saw Rick's smug face across the street. He'd be out there, trimming his hedges with precision, like a man sculpting a bonsai tree. He never waved. He just smirked, like he knew he had the upper hand. One evening, I caught him standing on his porch, arms crossed, staring at my gnomes like they were a plague. His wife, Carol, whispered something to him, and they both laughed. That did it. I wanted to march over and tell him where to shove his HOA rules, but I bit my tongue. Let him laugh. The punchline was coming. Finally, Thursday arrived. I was pacing the living room when the delivery truck pulled up. The driver hopped out, opened the back, and started unloading boxes, a mountain of boxes. My heart raced. It was like Christmas morning, except instead of toys, I had an army of ceramic mischief makers. The driver raised an eyebrow. "You opening a gnome store or something?" I grinned. "Something like that." I spent the next 4 hours in my garage, slicing open boxes, unwrapping gnomes, and lining them up like soldiers. Fishing gnomes, biker gnomes, even a couple of gnomes sitting on toilets. Each one had its own personality, its own little grin like they were in on the joke. By sunset, my garage looked like a gnome convention. And that was just the beginning. The real fun started after dark. I waited until the neighborhood was quiet, then slipped outside with a headlamp and started positioning my little army. First, I filled the flower beds. Then the walkway. Then the patch by the mailbox. I set some up on the porch, peeking out from the railing like spies. By the time I was done, there were dozens of them. My front yard looked like a magical invasion. I stepped back, hands on my hips, and laughed out loud. It was perfect. The next morning, I woke to the sound of voices. I peeked through the blinds and nearly doubled over with laughter. Rick was standing at the edge of my lawn, red in the face, his hands flying as he ranted to Carol. 2 other neighbors had stopped to watch. I threw on a robe, walked outside with a mug of coffee, and said, "Morning, Rick." He spun around, his face almost purple. "What the hell is this, James?" I took a slow sip of coffee. "What does it look like?" This is a violation of every HOA code in the book." "Funny," I said, glancing around. I didn't see a limit on joy. Carol gasped like I'd slapped her. Rick pointed a finger at me. "You have 24 hours to fix this. Or else." I raised an eyebrow. "Or else what? You gonna call the gnome police?" The neighbors snickered. Rick's jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might shatter. He turned on his heel and stormed off, muttering something about lawyers. I watched him go, grinning like a kid who just stole the cookie jar. But the best part? I wasn't even done yet. The backyard was empty. The driveway was empty. I still had 2 unopened boxes in the garage. This wasn't just going to be a statement. This was going to be a masterpiece. That night, I went bigger. I set up gnomes scaling the mailbox like mountaineers. I made a circle of them around the tree like they were holding a meeting. I even put one on the roof, sitting on the edge with his little ceramic legs dangling like he owned the place. By midnight, my property looked like a full-blown gnome kingdom. And I wasn't the only one enjoying the show. The next morning, I noticed cars slowing down in front of my house. People taking pictures, kids laughing and pointing. Someone even posted a video online. I heard one guy say, "This is the funniest damn thing I've seen all week." My little protest was going viral. Rick? He was losing his mind. He left 3 voicemails threatening to escalate this matter to the highest level. He even slipped another letter under my door, this one in all caps. But here's the thing. The more he pushed, the more people started siding with me. Neighbors who never said a word before were stopping by to tell me they loved the display. Linda brought over cookies and said, "James, you're a legend." For the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt since Emily left. I felt alive. This wasn't just about gnomes anymore. This was about standing up. About taking back control when life tried to knock you down. And Rick? Rick had no idea how far I was willing to go. Because the forest was coming next. By the end of the week, my house wasn't just a yard with gnomes anymore. It was a destination. People from 2 neighborhoods over were driving by to see the gnome house. Kids were taking selfies, teenagers were making TikToks, and even an old man in a classic Chevy stopped to give me a thumbs up. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. What started as a stupid HOA letter had turned into a full-blown spectacle. But in the back of my mind, I knew it was only a matter of time before Rick made his next move. And sure enough, he did. Saturday morning, I woke up to the sound of pounding on my door. I threw on a t-shirt, opened it, and there he was, Rick Peterson, in a crisp polo shirt and khaki shorts, clutching a clipboard like it was a weapon. Behind him stood 2 men I didn't recognize, both in suits. "James," Rick said, his voice tight with barely contained rage. "This has gone far enough." I leaned against the doorframe, sipping my coffee. "Morning, Rick. Nice day for a visit." This, he gestured wildly toward my yard, where at least 100 gnomes now stood in perfect formation, is a blatant violation of the HOA bylaws. These gentlemen are from our legal counsel, and unless you remove every single one of these by tomorrow, we will be filing a lawsuit. I raised an eyebrow. A lawsuit? Over garden decorations? Rick's face turned the color of a ripe tomato. "This isn't funny, James. You're lowering property values. You're making a mockery of this community." I glanced past him at the 2 lawyers, who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. "Property values, huh? Funny, because I saw a family taking photos out front yesterday. Probably the most excitement this street's seen in years." Rick's nostrils flared. "This is your final warning." And then, he made a mistake. A big one. He said, "If you don't comply, we'll have the city involved. They can fine you. They can seize your property." That word, seize, lit a fire in my chest. Nobody was taking my home. Not after Emily left. Not after everything I'd fought to keep together. I stepped forward, close enough that Rick had to tilt his head back to look at me. "You listen to me, Rick. You want to fight? Fine. But I promise you, you'll regret it." For the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Maybe fear. Maybe doubt. But he covered it quick, muttering something to the lawyers before storming off. I shut the door and just stood there, my hands shaking. This wasn't just a game anymore. This was war. That night, I went to work. The forest idea had been simmering in my mind all week. And now it was time. I drove to the nearest landscaping supply store and filled my truck bed with trees. Real damn trees. Pines, maples, shrubs, even a couple of dwarf spruces. The guy at the counter gave me a weird look, but I just smiled and said, "Big project." By midnight, my front yard was a construction zone. I tore up the lawn with a rented tiller, laid down soil, and planted every tree I bought. My muscles screamed, my back felt like it was on fire, but I didn't stop. Not until the last tree was in the ground and the gnomes were carefully placed among the foliage, peeking out like little woodland creatures. When I finally stepped back at 3 a.m., I was drenched in sweat, covered in dirt, and grinning like a madman. My yard wasn't a yard anymore. It was a forest, a gnome sanctuary. The next morning, the neighborhood woke up to chaos. People came out of their houses and just stared. My once pristine lawn was now a lush, green jungle, with paths winding through clusters of trees, flowers blooming everywhere, and gnomes hiding in every corner like Easter eggs. It wasn't just petty rebellion anymore. It was art. It was magic. And then Rick showed up. He came marching down the street like a man on a mission, phone in hand, filming everything. "This is destruction of property," he shouted. "This is vandalism. I walked out onto the porch, sipping my coffee like nothing happened. Morning, Rick. Like what I've done with the place. His voice cracked. You can't do this. This is against every HOA rule in existence. I shrugged. Show me the rule that says I can't plant trees. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's what I thought, I said with a smirk. By now, half the neighborhood had gathered. People were taking pictures, laughing, even cheering. Someone yelled, "Looks amazing, James." Another guy shouted, "About time someone stood up to the HOA." Rick turned beet red. "You're going to regret this," he spat, then stormed off, his phone still recording. I just stood there, grinning, because I knew something Rick didn't. The local news van pulling up at the end of the street. Yeah, that was for me. By evening, my house was on the evening news. The anchor called it the Great Gnome Rebellion, and the camera panned over my yard like it was the eighth wonder of the world. The story blew up online. Comments poured in. People loved it. They loved the creativity, the defiance, the humor. And then, something unexpected happened. I got a call from a local garden center. They wanted to sponsor me, send me more plants, more gnomes, even pay me to keep the display up as a marketing stunt. I nearly dropped the phone laughing. What started as a stupid HOA dispute was turning into a full-blown business opportunity. But not everyone was laughing. That night, I got a letter slipped under my door. No envelope. Just a single sheet of paper in angry handwriting. "This isn't over. You'll pay for this." No signature, but I didn't need one. I knew exactly who wrote it. Rick wasn't done, and neither was I. Because if he thought a forest was the end of this, he had no idea what I had planned next. By Sunday morning, my yard wasn't just a forest, it was a tourist attraction. People were lining up to walk through the little winding paths I'd made, snapping photos with the gnomes tucked behind trees, perched on branches, or fishing in the tiny pond I built overnight using a kiddie pool and some landscaping rocks. I had donation jars set up by the walkway. In just a few hours, they were stuffed with cash. A kid even handed me a $5 bill and said, "Your house is awesome, mister." For the first time in years, I felt like I was part of something bigger than myself. People were smiling, laughing, coming together over something silly and joyful. My little act of rebellion had turned into a neighborhood event, but I knew Rick wouldn't let it slide. Sure enough, around noon, I saw him striding toward my house with a cop car in tow. Two officers stepped out, looking confused as they took in the scene. Families walking around, kids eating ice cream, a guy playing guitar near the sidewalk. It was like a block party, all because of me. Rick pointed at me like a prosecutor in court. "Officers, that man is in violation of at least 7 HOA bylaws. He's destroyed his lawn, erected illegal decorations, and he's running an unlicensed event on HOA property." One of the officers, a tall guy with mirrored sunglasses, looked at me. "Sir, you mind explaining what's going on here?" I smiled. "Sure thing, officer. I'm just enjoying my property. Every tree here, bought legally. Every decoration, paid for with my own money. And as for the crowd," I gestured to the people milling around. "They're just neighbors enjoying the view. I'm not charging admission. Donations are voluntary." The officer scratched his chin, then turned to Rick. "So what law is he breaking exactly?" Rick's face turned red. "The HOA laws. This is a planned community. There are rules." The cop shrugged. "HOA rules aren't the same as state law, sir. Not really something we can enforce." Rick looked like he'd just swallowed a lemon. But property values. He's making a mockery of the neighborhood." The officer smirked. "Looks like he's making the neighborhood pretty popular to me." The crowd laughed. Rick's face contorted with rage. "This isn't over," he hissed, then stormed off, leaving the cops chuckling as they waved goodbye. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. The next day, Rick filed an emergency HOA meeting. He sent letters to every house on the block demanding they attend. I showed up, just to see the look on his face when he tried to take me down. The meeting was held in the community center, a bland little building with beige walls and a faint smell of old coffee. Neighbors packed the room, murmuring like they were about to watch a courtroom drama. Rick stood at the front, gripping the podium so hard his knuckles turned white. "This man," he said, pointing at me like I was a fugitive, "has brought chaos to our community. He has disregarded our rules. He has embarrassed us publicly." I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, letting him rant. "And therefore," he continued, I motioned that James Walker be fined $500 per day until his yard is returned to its original state. If he refuses, we will initiate foreclosure proceedings under section. Point of order. A voice called from the crowd. It was Linda. She stood up, tall and proud, holding her phone. Before we vote, I think everyone should see this. She turned the screen around. On it was a news article. Local man turns HOA dispute into viral sensation. Neighborhood gnome forest draws visitors, boosts local businesses. The headline wasn't even the best part. Below it was a quote from the mayor, praising the display as a creative community landmark. The room erupted in murmurs. Rick's face went pale. Linda smirked. Oh, and did I mention? James was offered a city beautification grant. They want to partner with him to expand the project. Gasps. Cheers. A couple of people even clapped. Rick sputtered like a broken sprinkler. That's not, he can't. But it was too late. The tide had turned. Neighbors were patting me on the back, telling me how much they loved the display. Someone even suggested making it an annual event. Rick tried to call for a vote, but nobody raised their hand. Not one person. I stood up, walked to the podium, and leaned in close so only he could hear. Guess you're out of gnome options, Rick. His jaw clenched so tight I thought he'd crack a tooth. That night, I sat on my porch with a cold beer, watching the sunset through the branches of my brand-new forest. The gnomes were glowing in the golden light, their little smiles almost smug. Linda walked over and handed me a plate of brownies. Congratulations, James. You didn't just win. You made history. I laughed. Guess so. For a while, we just sat there in comfortable silence, watching people stroll past and take pictures. It felt good. Better than good. And then, just as the sky turned pink, I saw Rick's car roll by. He didn't stop. Didn't even look at me. Just drove past, his face a mask of defeat. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Because the truth was, this wasn't just about gnomes. It was about standing up when someone tries to push you down. About turning pain into something beautiful. About finding a reason to smile again when life gives you every reason not to. And maybe, just maybe, about reminding people that a little bit of whimsy can change the world. As the first fireflies flickered in the trees, I raised my beer in a silent toast to Gus, the fishing gnome who started it all. Here's to you, little buddy, I whispered. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like everything was going to be okay. If you enjoyed this intense story, smash that like button and subscribe for more gripping, cinematic tales. Don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss the next thriller. Your support keeps these stories coming.